All right, everybody. So, some news came out a couple days ago. Some completely unsurprising news, but it is still very nice to have it fully confirmed and getting extremely wide media coverage nonetheless. If you've been paying attention to politics for the last couple election cycles at this point, then you know that Russia has been undeniably attempting to impact the results of our elections, very explicitly to try and benefit Trump. Why a country like Russia, which is very much not friendly with America, desperately wanting to affect our elections and get a particular candidate elected is not something that brings out more concern among the American people, I don't know. But regardless, it's been known about for quite some time. The very first headline that hit about Russian interference in our elections was the bot farms. Back in 2016 or 2015, a bunch of investigations were done that found that a ton of users on social media posting in favor of Trump, many of them claiming to be gay or people of color, were actually bot accounts run out of Russia. So from there, people were like, okay, so why are these like Russian why are these like buildings in Russia being run with like just bots posting shit about American politics all day on big social media platforms? Like, why is this a thing? And it started to come together. Well, okay, Russia wants to interfere with our elections. And it got even crazier when we had the big like electoral interference trial. Many people on Trump's own administration were actually charged and went to prison because it was found that they absolutely were working with Russia to try and help Trump get elected, something that was illegal. The only thing that wasn't proven was that Trump had any knowledge of it. And since then, it has continually been obvious that Russia is in some way, shape, or form pulling the strings behind the scenes and are somehow backing the conservative culture war being pushed in America. And for a long time, we had to theorize, like, oh, what could it be? Is it, like, are a bunch of right-wing figures getting payouts from the Kremlin? Like, what's going on here? What is happening? Well, it looks like we now know. At least we know some of the content creators, well-known conservative content creators, that this whole time, or at least for a while now, have been getting paid by Russia to promote Donald Trump and, possibly more importantly, promote Russia and shit-talk Ukraine. If you're wondering why conservative pundits have been so anti-Ukraine, well, it might all start to make sense here, and we might now have a pretty good litmus test for what conservative content creators are taking money from Russia and which ones maybe aren't. Pretty much which ones of them think that Ukraine deserves to be invaded and annexed.
We begin tonight with Russia still listening and still interfering in our elections. That is what we learned when the Justice Department announced indictments and sanctions Wednesday in a scheme that sounds straight out of 2016. The DOJ charged 2 Russian media executives in an alleged plot to illegally funnel millions of dollars to right-wing influencers by way of a pro-Trump media outlet. Specifically, the department charged 2 employees of Russian-backed media company RT with a nearly $10 million plan to fund an unnamed Tennessee content creation company as one of their covert projects to influence American politics. The company's description matches that of Tennessee-based Tenet Media, according.
Reminder, by the way, the Daily Wire is also run out of Tennessee. Unless they've moved to Texas, I am pretty certain the Daily Wire's offices are also in Tennessee.
To a review by NBC News of details included in the indictment. In a related but separate legal action, prosecutors seized 32 Russian-controlled web domains tied to a broader Russian influence campaign accused of spreading propaganda through bogus news sites to American voters. An affidavit supporting seizing the domains showed information.
Stuff like this is really making me wonder how much is Russia behind? Because the last 8 years have seen an unprecedented rising of the tide when it comes to, like, radical right-wing culture war shit. And it's just making me wonder, what Like, how much is Russia behind here? Like, how much of this is being, like, how much of this last 8 years of weird culture war conservative shit was being pushed by Russia? It makes me wonder.
Detailing a series of topics Russian actors wanted amplified in the influencers' content. Things like encroaching universal poverty, record inflation, the halting of economic growth.
Russia was giving them the talking points. The idea that everyone is going broke and that Bidenomics isn't working. The risk of job loss for white Americans. Holy shit. Russia literally giving them talking points to make, like, telling them, yeah, you gotta make the white Americans scared. You gotta turn them against the brown people. Privileges for people of color, perverts, and disabled. What? You gotta focus in on the privileges that people of color, perverts, I don't know what, I guess that means, like, gay people, if it's coming from Russia, because that's how, like, their media refers to LGBT people, and disabled people. The video sounds loud compared to you? Okay, I'll turn it down a bit. Thank you. I appreciate that, actually, Gloria. The constant lies of the U.S. political party B administration about the real situation in the country. Constant lies of the U.S. political party? What? Like, literally, like, you must talk about the evil of America? What?
Unaffordable prices for food and essential goods, risk of job loss for white Americans, privileges for people of color, perverts, and the disabled. Constant lies of the U.S. political party administration.
To be fair,
about the
hey, to be fair, you know who didn't show up in this list of names? Hassan. Supposedly Hassan has just been doing the Russia apologia for free this whole time. Absolutely wild.
Real situation in the country. Threat of crime coming from people of color and immigrants, including new immigrants from Ukraine.
Oh, overspending on foreign policy and at the expense of the interests of white U.S. citizens. It's wild how many conservatives just across the board you hear just parroting exactly what Russia wants them to think and say. Such fucking sheep. Yeah, basically the whole idea that we need to keep our money here and not help other countries, even if they're our allies and they're being invaded, because, like, veterans are going homeless. Very popular conservative talking point seems to come from fucking Russia.
Overspending on foreign policy and at the expense of the interests of white U.S. citizens. Constant lies to the voters by U.S. political party B in power and last.
Oh, U.S. political party B means the Democrats, I'm guessing.
But not least, America is suffering a defeat despite candidate B's efforts. We are being drawn into the war. Our guys will die in Ukraine.
There it is. Every account on Twitter you've seen posting that Biden is going to pull U.S. troops into war with Ukraine, Russian talking point. Our guys means, obviously this is coming from Russia, but when they say our guys, this is what they want the right-wing influencers to be saying. That our guys are going to die in Ukraine because Biden is going to send U.S. boots on the ground in Russia and Ukraine to help them fight. All these fear-mongering talking points. All these reasons you hear from conservatives these days about why they're going to vote for Trump. So many of these talking points you hear as a justification, and they came from Russia. The top that these talking points came from was fucking Russia.
Now, if that also sounds like a list of pro-Trump right-wing talking points, or frankly, your average day on Fox, it essentially is. But it also highlights how Russia launders its propaganda into the American psyche, especially through the use of social media, which is why Tenet Media came in handy. The indictment notes Company One, which describes itself as a network of heterodox commentators that focus on Western political and cultural issues, the exact same language used by Tenet Media on its website and social media channels, and identifies 6 commentators as its talent. The indictment doesn't name them, but Tenet Media has 6 right-wing YouTube.
So, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, and Lauren Southern are the biggest names that came up in this. Paid by Russia. The fact that Dave Rubin is a gay man taking money from a like regime that bans gayness and criminalizes so much as like telling kids that gay people exist, like criminalizes that the same way that Republicans in America want to. Well, now that you think about it, it's like, where did they get the idea from? They're taking ideas from Russia. The Republican push to destroy American democracy and freedom is a playbook they've gotten from the fucking Kremlin. Now we know where it all comes from.
Commentators on its roster. Tim Pool, Benny Johnson.
Yeah, apparently Tim Pool in Damage Control is now 180'd on Ukraine and is now pro-Ukraine. Because he's just a massive grifter and he doesn't want to lose money.
Dave Rubin, Taylor Hanson, Lauren Southern, and Matt.
Lauren Chen, the other Lauren, was also a high-ranking member of Tenet Media who is getting paid directly by Russia, something I'm pretty sure I've said. There's no way Lauren Chen isn't, like, a paid shill by Russia. It's like, I don't know. Do you think this Russia stuff will help Democrats? I hope so. It's getting some media attention, more than I expected, like MSNBC covering it. So, it could. It could. I don't know how much that conservative fans, though, care about, like, Russia being, like, the real mouthpiece or the real place where their talking points are coming from, where their news is filtered through. I guess in dictatorships, the only good undesirables are the ones that agree with you, talking about Russia. Yeah. This is PSYOP shit? Yeah. Yeah. These people are Russian PSYOPs, it would seem.
Christensen.
Makes sense considering Dave Rubin is like a blatant grifter. Tim Pool is so dumb if anything he says is something he believes that I'm surprised he can dress himself in the morning. Which, to be fair, I mean, he doesn't have much outfit variety. So yeah, and then Lauren Southern is extremely smart. Lauren Southern's an interesting person. We debated once, and then after that, she followed me on Twitter, and then like a while later, like, when the Lonnie stuff happened, she, like, randomly messaged me, like, after I hadn't, like, spoken to her, like, in a year, like, since that debate, and she just messages me, like, a weirdly heartfelt message, like, apologizing for the drama. It's like, okay, well, thank you, I guess, but all right? It was weird. I don't know. Maybe she's just really smart and wants to have, like, a lot of people that are in any way influential in her pocket or something. I don't know what the deal was with that. But yeah, I'm guessing she's kind of just a like ruthless business person. And Benny Johnson, I don't know a lot about. I'm pretty sure his whole thing is he tries to do this like almost Ben Shapiro light kind of thing. Like another, you know, he's another one of those conservative dudes who dresses sharply and tries to present themselves as like a reasonable, level-minded individual who's wading through the insanity of the woke left, right?
And you would be forgiven if right now you're asking yourself, who? Just know that some of them are prominent MAGA celebrities. They adamantly deny involvement in posts on Elon Musk's ex-Twitter. Tim Pool said that he and others were deceived and were victims. Dave Rubin claimed he knew absolutely nothing about any of.
So they're all claiming they didn't know that the company that they were a part of was paid by Russia. The reality is they all knew, obviously, and they didn't want to just... They have to deny the allegation that has been consistent for years that these conservative figures are paid by Russia. They had to deny that, obviously. They can't admit that and just, like, yeah. But now they're in just, like, a really rough situation where it's really hard for them to deny and claim that Russian electoral interference is just some crazy conspiracy.
Of this fraudulent activity. The indictment does suggest the unnamed commentators were unaware that they were being paid by Russian efforts. But a look into the internet presence of some of these creators' content shows what Russia was looking for.
What else is going on with Ukraine these days? It's not just that we are funding the war. Everyone knows that we're funding a war, which you might argue if you're funding the war, if you're paying for the war, maybe that means you're in the war, but we've never actually gotten authorization for this war. Our leaders keep telling us that this is the most important thing in town.
This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. Ukraine is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world. We should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia.
Apologize to Russia?
A lot of conservatives believe this. A lot of, like, even from time to time, I'll watch, like, podcasts on YouTube just to fill, like, the dead air while I'm playing games or something off stream. And one of the podcasts I watch is called PKA, Painkiller Already. Old podcast. If you're more on the sensitive side and you can't just cringe at hearing shit that's offensive that you don't agree with, then just avoid it. Trust me. Because it is run by three almost middle-aged, extremely wealthy white men who have had relatively cushy lives and have landed in very conservative positions and have a lot to say about people who've had it harder than them and how they haven't gotten lives as good as them. Mind you, these are all dudes who've made their living off of YouTube, running a pod. Like, they blew up back during the Call of Duty commentary days. And I watched this podcast, and the most conservative member of the podcast is Taylor. And he's a funny dude and all, but God, does the guy clearly just buy hook, line, and sinker most conservative propaganda he hears. Sometimes he second guesses it and has an unconventional position for a conservative or a Trump supporter, which he is. But he thinks he's like a rational free thinker who's just buying Fox propaganda from wherever he's hearing it. And I hear that dude talk all the time about how, like, Ukraine is a money hole that we're sinking our money into, and if we continue this war, it's going to lead to World War III. He's obviously not paid by Russia. The random, like, funny, like, dude on the podcast, like, it is not a, like, I mean, it's a kind of right-wing podcast when it gets into politics, but it's not always politics. It's not like a Russia paid for propaganda outlet. It's just some dudes who make funny jokes on a podcast who happen to be conservative, and they fall for these talking points. They repeat word for word the shit that originally came from Russian propaganda mills and disinformation campaigns. I bring this all up as a point of saying, like, even the normal dude that you know, that if like, even that one normal buddy you got, or that one normal dude you know who's just kind of conservative, probably believes these things and has no idea that he's literally getting brainwashed by enemy foreign powers influencing our politics and affecting the perception of a reality of our citizens. What Russia is doing is pushing so hard to make reality optional. That's really what this is all about. Reality being optional. For conservatives, what's real, what isn't real, what happened and what didn't happen, they decide. They get it from media figures that are paid by Russia. Russia is deciding the reality for millions and millions and millions and millions of American voters.
Of course, it's not like Russia had to pay everyone, since we all know there are elected officials willing to push the Kremlin line for free.
Vladimir Putin has not said he wants to go march across Europe and take Europe. And the reality is Ukraine is not even a NATO member nation. But if you want to know something, Lloyd Austin and the others here, more than anything, want to send your uncles, your cousins, and your...
Hey, guys, do you think if Ukraine was a member of NATO, that Republicans, even the ones that aren't paid by Ukraine, would be saying that we should be helping Ukraine then? Because right now, there are several NATO nations that desperately want Ukraine to hold fast and stand firm. Because if Ukraine gets annexed, it becomes a Russian satellite state or just part of Russia that'll be touching several NATO countries. Like, I know it touches Poland, and I'm pretty sure it touches... Maybe it's just Poland. But yeah, Poland in particular is a NATO member that does not want Ukraine falling to Russia. So... I'm pretty oh, and Lithuania? Okay. So I'm pretty certain that, like, if Ukraine was in NATO, it would make no difference. None of these people would argue that, like they wouldn't argue any differently. It's not a real argument. It's just them listing things that might sound reasonable to the lowest common denominator of Americans. Like, why are we helping this country? They're not even in NATO. Well, a lot of Americans don't know the geography of Europe or really anything outside of America. I mean, hardly any of them know the geography outside of their town. So, for them, just like imagining our money going off to some country that they can't even picture the shape of in their mind, us spending millions and millions and millions, as they're told, when in reality what we're doing is shipping, like, just dust-gathering old equipment from our what's the word for it? Our stocks, our excess stocks. Like, we are sending money, but most of it is, like, physical items that were already made, paid for, and weren't being used. So it's just, yeah, there's just, I don't know. It really does seem like what probably happened was these, like, a bunch of the biggest figures got paid. Oh, shit. You know what? I'm thinking Chris Raygun kind of whistleblowed on this years ago. Shit, that's crazy. I tried to find the video, and people are talking about how it's really hard to find now, and I found a Reddit page that's talking about where they found it, and both the comments that say they found a copy of it are talking about finding it in my video from years ago. Here's the Xanderhall video, about 2 minutes 30 seconds, in case anyone wants to try and get a higher quality version. Okay, so 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I show this video. That's wild. I just go looking for a video clip on the internet, stumble across a Reddit page where people are also looking for it, and they start talking about my channel and how, like, my channel's the best place to find it. That's fucking crazy. Anyway, here's the video where I think Chris Raygun might have low-key whistleblew this shit years ago.
Now, this is the story all about how several years back I got an email from some shady people with a lot of power who said, you can make a ton of money towing the conservative party line and we'll make sure that happens for you. And I said, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be beholden to any fucking body but me. And I refused that offer, and the years went by, and it's become very fucking clear who the people were who just did not refuse that money. And it's fucking actually wildly obvious, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah. So that was like years ago when Chris uploaded that TikTok. Like literal years ago.
Your sons and daughters to the front lines in Ukraine.
I will not vote for $1 more to Ukraine. I will not vote for one more piece of materiel to Ukraine. We are far too entangled in this conflict. I believe we have extended this conflict.
What's in America's best interest is to accept Ukraine is going to have to cede some territory to the Russians, and we need to bring this war to a close.
It's really crazy that, like, a adversarial, like, nation, foreign nation, has declared an information war in America, Metal Gear Solid 2 style, and there's realistically nothing that can be done about it. Like, remember, all of these years of Russian-paid propaganda that is being pushed by these people has also coincided with this narrative that the left is violent and basically framing, like, any form of political action against, like, any far-right takeover or anything like that as, like, insane and everything. Meanwhile, these people are literally paid for by a country that wants to destroy America. Like, the Russian oligarchy wants to destroy America. It's not like saying, oh, Republicans want to destroy America. I'm saying the Russian oligarchy is an adversarial nation that we are currently in a conflict with, a proxy war, basically. Well, kind of, we're fighting through a proxy, sort of. Russia's just fighting. Anyway, the idea that we have to sit by and remain cordial and polite while now knowing that the Republican Party is pretty much wholesale in the pocket of a country that is our enemy, this is a fundamental flaw of democracy, if I have ever seen one. That in our, like, era of politics, we have to politely smile and play along the lines and not just acknowledge the reality that the Republican Party is trying to sell out our entire country to an adversarial foreign nation, and that every single American is at threat because of this. Like, we just don't get to acknowledge that validly because there's still a level of deniability still being pushed. I don't know, man. It's crazy to me that, like, so many people in our government can proudly state that they are in the pocket of an adversarial nation's leader, and that our response to that is not, like, handcuffs. You know what I mean? Like, Russia, or, like, J.D. Vance and Trump, realistically, should be arrested for suggesting that the leader of an adversarial nation to our own deserves an apology or deserves a win in a conflict that we're in. Like, that is bragging about how your administration is going to sabotage a conflict with an adversarial nation when you take power. Like, how is this something that we're okay with? Seriously. This is literally a matter of national security. One of the most important things that a thing can be. National security. Like, one of the most important things, period. Like, when you see a list of important things, in the top 6, one of them is the 2 words national security next to each other. That is a very important thing, and that is what is threatened right now. I want Kamala Harris and the Democrats to go hard on this shit, because the Republicans are currently a puppet of an adversarial nation that wants America to lose.
Close.
You know, I know you might have been surprised not to see former Fox host Tucker Carlson in there, but he does make an appearance in the Justice Department's indictment, just not by name. The indictment reveals that one of the indicted RT employees shared a video of a well-known U.S. political commentator visiting a grocery store in Russia, a likely reference to Tucker's infamous Moscow shopping trip in which he marveled how much better it was shopping in the dictatorship than shopping at home, ahead of the interview in which he did everything but...
It really is an information war being waged on us by Russia. It's been like... It was a conspiracy for a while to believe it went any further than bot farms posting shit online, and then we found out that members of Trump's administration were working with Russia to help him get elected, and we're like, okay, well, no, thinking he had anything to do with it is conspiratorial. And now we're finding out that some of the largest figures that have presided over the cultural wave that brought Trump into office and keeps him relevant are paid off by Russia. It's like, Some online lefties are even parroting the whole stop the war in Ukraine and leave Ukraine talk. Well, that shit like tons of stuff that the right-wingers say like a lot of the stuff that right-wingers say bleeds over to the left. Sleepy Joe was an insult towards Biden almost exclusively used by Trump. That was Trump's nickname for Joe Biden. How many times have you heard lefties calling Biden Sleepy Joe seriously as an insult on the basis that he's not, like, energetic enough, right? Like, the online left adopted Trump's talking points about Biden fully and then parroted them and helped push them around to the point where they had to replace Biden because even on the left, the talking points that Trump originated got so popular. Because the most fun thing to do around Biden, because he's just a very dry, good president, is to repeat deranged bullshit about him. Like, he's too sleepy to be president and do a good job. It's like, what?
Literally sit in Vladimir Putin's lap and hug him like he's Santa Claus. Later that day, a producer messaged the company founder saying, "They want me to post this," adding, "It just feels like over shilling." The 2 founders of the media company are also unnamed in the indictment.
So is Russia telling them, like, to make, like, specific posts, too? Like, oh, you got to post this on Twitter, claiming that, like, Ukraine's evil or something?
But Tenet Media is registered to 2 people named Liam Donovan and Lauren Chen. Chen was fired from her job as a commentator for right-wing Blaze Media. She had contributed to videos to its Blaze TV. It seems the reality of it all.
By the way, something you'll notice is that Lauren Chen is, like, very genius. I know you can't see it as well. I'll have to make my chat go away for a second. Does anyone recognize what she's wearing in that photo and what she wears in all of her videos these days? Look very closely at the shirt she's wearing, the shoulders of it, for example. Now, if you're ever wondering how much of the appearance and branding of a lot of these female conservative pundits in particular is intentional, She is literally wearing the exact blouse style that the trad wife Wojak wears. Wojaks, for those that somehow don't know, are little drawings of different archetypes of people that usually conservative figures online play dolls with. And so it'll be like them as like a Chad Wojak and then like a trad wife Wojak, and they'll like create a scenario where they totally win the girl. It's like playing dolls, but adult men do it online, and they tend to be conservative, and they use those little drawings to do it. It's pretty funny.
To its Blaze TV. It seems the reality of it all is you hear these narratives. Ukraine is our true enemy.
There's no way that's been fully confirmed, One Piece 34. If it is, then I'll look into it tomorrow, and we'll find out if it was a transphobia-motivated shooting. If that ends up being the case, then I imagine the right's going to drop coverage of that story instantly.
Or the economy is doing so terribly, it's in ruin, in spite of ample evidence to the contrary. How the white man is falling behind because the government is giving preferential treatment to blacks and brown people.
These talking points literally come from Russia. I'm sure they were already popular before, before Russia had a strong... I mean, maybe Russia's been impacting our politics since before 2016. Who knows? But at least, like, it didn't seem like this kind of stuff was as big. Like, the corporate Russia-funded shit, like the Blaze Media stuff, wasn't as big during the culture war era of, like, the Gamergate times. The Gamergate times spawned these people, and then it seems like Russia, like, picked them up more likely than not. So don't get me wrong. The idea that, like, minorities are getting preferential treatment over white, straight, heterosexual people or whatever, that's been a talking point for a while, but the overwhelming preponderance of people repeating it seems to be fed into by, and the fire seems to be fed by Russian money. Because, like, there were always people who believe that dumb shit and would say that stuff, but, like, man, has it become the basis of conservative talking points over the last 8 years, maybe 6 years. The idea that, like, white, straight, cis people are now the disadvantaged in society.
Remember the twin boogeyman of DEI and critical race theory? You hear these things and you think, yeah, these are just right-wingers being the miserable wretches that they always are. When it turns out
she's cooking.
They might also be getting cash apps from Mother Russia to say it. But it's not like some genius idea, right?
You're getting paid by Russia through Cash App? That's fucking crazy. Hello, comrade. Have you repeated the anti-American talking points we sent you? All right, we will cash up you $25,000 and a bottle of vodka. Thank you, comrade. May America fall.
The Russians are just banking on the things that right-wingers are already hopped up about in order to scare white American voters into voting for the candidate Vladimir Putin wants to win. And no surprise, his preferred candidate is this guy.
Russia, you had a relationship with them and North Korea and the mullahs and
But nobody was tougher with Russia than me.
Joining me now is David Korn, Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones and MSNBC political contributor, and Anand Giridharadas, publisher of the newsletter The Ink and MSNBC political analyst. Thank you both for being here. David, I will start with you. It is sort of remarkable to see the complete capture of the U.S. Republican Party by pro-Russian interests. So this group that is now indicted, it's not like they had to work hard. The right has already been pre-captured to the Russian side. But what do you make of this indictment and what it is revealed?
Well, we got to look at this a little bit in historical context. This isn't coming out of nowhere. This is now the third election in a row that the Russians have tried to intervene to help Donald Trump. They did it in 2016.
And this is fundamentally what, like, I don't like about the civility politics of America. Like, back in the 1960s, America executed a couple for, like, leaking national secrets to Russia. Just straight up. I think they were, like, the Rosensteins or something. I forget. It was some Rosen something. And they got executed. Yeah, Rosenbergs, my bad. It was Rosen something. I just remember the word Rose. But, yeah, they got straight up executed by the USA for leaking secrets, like valuable secrets to Russia. The fact that that energy is not carried forward to the Republican Party and some of the most powerful people in our government doing essentially the same thing to weaken America for a strike from Russia, which is effectively what this must be for, right? Like, why else is Russia investing in destroying American democracy? They want to weaken us. And why do they want to weaken us? Why any other nation would want to weaken America? To strike America and have a better chance of actually winning.
And Donald Trump said it wasn't happening. He lied. He aided and abetted the attack. And the whole Republican Party, or most of it, and the conservative movement ended up agreeing with him because they didn't want to be caught cross swords with him on this point. So right there, he led them into this Russian denialism. And then in 2020, we kind of forget about this because Trump didn't win. But Ukrainian officials who were tied to Russian intelligence, according to whom? According to Trump's own Treasury Department, were putting out disinformation about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. It didn't work, but it made the election close. And the right wing was amplifying this stuff, Rudy Giuliani and others, Fox News, over and over again. So the Russians have a pretty clear idea about how to play this. It's nothing new for them. They've had years of experience, and here they are out there with these right-wing commentators, also with these websites that are out there and ginning up right-wingers to push these talking points as we get closer to the election.
He's completely right. Ironically enough, every day it seems like we're getting closer to that one Metal Gear Solid 2-bit being reality.
Human memories, ideas, culture.
This is basically what's happening.
Genes don't contain any record of human history.
Is it something that should not be passed on? Should that information be left at the mercy of nature?
We've always kept records of our lives through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
So the Republicans have done everything in their power to attack DEI, CRT, things that they have decided to make sound scary, but what they're actually calling these things is history. People learn from history if they're able to actually learn what happened. And Republicans have been desperately, for a long time, but especially as of late, attacking the education system and trying to ban the teaching of certain history. The existence of slavery, how bad, conservative movements have affected the quality of life for Americans in the past, the history of civil rights movements. These are all things the Republicans want banned, because if they can ban it, if they can destroy that information and destroy that history, no one will remember it. And if no one remembers it, no one can learn from it. And that is what the conservatives need to hold the minds of the people. That is what will win them the most people, is no historical context from which people can hear a talking point from them and be like, wait a second, that sounds a lot like so-and-so. Yeah, the attempted genocide of all the Native Americans, they don't want that being taught. They push it as though teaching this history is teaching young white straight kids to hate themselves. That's not what it is at all. Learning history that other people did just because they're the same race as you or the same sexuality as you or the same gender as you does not in any way indicate that you should feel bad about sharing those characteristics. It's simply learning history. They're just trying to make it sound like learning that history is an attack on you, so you'll agree that you shouldn't be allowed to know or learn it, and neither should your kids or any future generations.
But not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness. Never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
It will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context?
The digital society furthers human flaws and
I love old Metal Gear Solid dialogue
of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing.
All parties here except for Raiden are insane, obviously, but the argument being made is that the proliferation of things like the internet or just the general connection of people being able to communicate more and more means that over time, the memory of historical events, the reality that people choose to believe, will get more and more muddied and harder to sort of parse out. And now we're kind of entering an era that's very similar to what's described there, right? Like this sort of we're in a time where the majority of posts and things on the internet are not generated by humans. I'm not sure if you followed any of my segments where I've talked about like AI, but it is pretty much fully confirmed now that dead internet theory is real. In fact, more than half of the things posted online were not made by humans now. So like, most content on the internet is not man-made. It's AI generated or produced by bots or reposted by bots, not a real human person. And as this happens, as more and more of what you even think other people believe is controlled by algorithms, bots, and any person who can just pay to run a bot farm, everything's going to continue to drift apart. You know, at this point, half the country, roughly down the middle, is schismed on what reality is, whether or not, like, injustices have taken place in American history is a matter of subjective opinion. Not whether or not those injustices were injustices, but whether or not they happened is the thing that is a matter of subjective opinion now. At least for conservatives, it is.
It's just been going on, and the right has just refused to acknowledge this. And for some, it's been very profitable to not acknowledge it.
Yeah, and Anand, that's where I want to come to you, because, you know, you've tailed with some of these folks who were annoyed that you were criticizing the billionaire class. But I mean, to me, getting at these people who, a lot of people who are watching this show probably don't even know who Tim Pool and these people are, but that is because they are trying to capture a much younger demographic. They're sort of taking that Russian cap.
Russia is desperate to win over the hearts and minds of young Americans. And it makes me wonder, like, are they also trying to do this on the other end? Like, is there some, like, obviously we haven't found out that, like, Hassan is paid by Russia, but it makes me wonder, like, are a ton of tanky figures, like, obviously not the obvious ones, like those that are working with Russia today, but, like, are some of the tanky figures paid by Russia? Could China be dipping into this and paying people? I don't know. It's just political commentators receiving money from foreign adversarial nations, not good.
Capture and then marketing it down to younger and younger receivers of information.
To be fair, yeah. If it was anything that would be like paying out tankies, it would be China. China would be paying out tankies for like pushing pro-China stuff. I know that Hakeem recently made a video about how the Tiananmen massacre. Tiananmen Square massacre wasn't real, and the thumbnail is like that famous photo of the person standing in front of the tank, and big red text like slapped over it that says "fake."
Yeah, you know, we have a post up at the Ink tonight trying to look at this indictment in a larger light, and I'd say a couple things. First of all, there are a lot of things countries can do to each other, particularly when they're powerful countries like Russia. There's a big menu, right? Binders full of choices available to Vladimir Putin, right? You can take out power grids, you can do stuff on banking systems, you can bomb things, you can do assassinations, the whole slew of things. I think first we have to think about the fact that in these three elections, as David's talked about, basically the era we've lived in the last decade plus, the Russian weapon of choice to sabotage the United States of America and push it into democratic decay is the inflammation of our discourse, right? I think that's really significant. Like, I don't think these operations necessarily have tilted elections or had that enormous an effect. We have our own problems in this country that we don't need Russian help to.
It really feels like, what, if anything, the most innocent outcome, the least bad outcome that Russia is trying to create with this is to weaken America militarily. It wouldn't surprise me, because, like, there's this narrative that, like, America is super warmongering, and the more research that I do, it's like, man, yeah, America does have, especially the further back you go, like, around, like, Republican administrations in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we definitely got involved in conflict in a way that seems far less justifiable. But man, even like for the most part, Republicans haven't gotten us into much conflict, mostly because no conflict starts when Republicans are in power, generally, coincidentally enough. But it seems as though more often than not, when we get into conflict, more recently, a Democrat's in office. And when you actually look into it, it's not because the Democrat wants to start a war, is it like a war hawk? It's because conflict just starts, and America is like obligated in some way, usually contractually, to help its ally. Mind you, like, if you're wondering how like the average lefty responds to this argument, I made this argument recently talking about how like the US has agreements that like mandate it help to protect certain allies, including Israel. And the response from many people in my comments was, I don't care if they have agreements with certain countries like Israel. We don't need to be getting involved in conflicts or helping a genocide. It's like, okay, well, you just like, do you not just care? Do you just not care about how like politics actually works, like at all? It's just about like chanting slogans. I don't know. Anyway, America is obligated to protect its allies, like Ukraine, and because of that, I imagine that what Russia wants to do, what China might want to do, what Iran might want to do, what any adversarial nation you could think of might want to do with America, would be to create a schism in the voter population that forces American leaders to shy away from helping our allies and getting involved in any conflict. I mean, with Israel, fuck it. Like, I don't know if you guys know that I've got like Israeli fans that don't like Israel, but they live there. And like, if we stop supporting Israel, they're gonna die. Like, there are good people in Israel that are there, and our military and financial support is keeping them from getting airstruck, or I should just say bombed, by Hamas, as in like bombs are exploding over their house regularly. And if that stops, if that support stops, mind you, the Iron Dome is already getting outdated, and bombs are slipping through and getting to civilian populations. Like, there are fine people that live in Israel that are not genocidal maniacs that die without U.S. support. Like, Britain and Israel's other allies are nowhere near as valuable to Israel as America is, you know? The Iron Dome's outdated now. Did you guys not know that the Iron Dome was made to stop bombs made out of, like, sugar and fertilizer? Like, as of late, Hamas is getting their hands on repurposed Israeli weaponry from all the bombs that land in Gaza and don't go off because it's getting bombed so much they can actually arm themselves with the unexploded munitions. Hamas is stocking themselves up with arms from, I believe they've gotten arms from Iran as well. Not to mention, Israel was recently attacked by Iran, which, mind you, Iran is a very capable country. If Iran decides to go in like guns blazing with all it can do against Israel, it's going to be a problem. Like, we'll have to help. Like, they just sent like a little poke that was that drone volley before, and like damage was done to Israeli civilian populations. The Iron Dome is becoming exponentially less effective against the munitions being used by Hamas on Israeli civilian populations.
To create, but it is their judgment of our Achilles heel that is so revealing here. And when you look at some of these people, these very inflammatory people who they've been...
I didn't get to finish my main point. Yeah, it feels like what Russia wants to do is left and right push continue to promote the idea that any conflict whatsoever the U.S. gets involved in is bad, no matter what. Like the idea on left and right that we don't need to be supporting Ukraine. We need to stop supporting any allies in any conflict, wholesale stop supporting Israel. Like all this seems like it may be coming from Russia, a lot of it at least, to make it such that U.S. leaders in the future are scared to help allies when, say, Russia invades. If like it becomes so unpopular to be funding Ukraine, maybe America stops doing that. And that's what I think Russia wants. Russia wants world leaders to be terrified of the voter response to helping any ally nation if, say, Russia invades them in the future. So America becomes basically neutered on the world stage. That's what I think might be Russia's goal. Neutering America on the world stage, getting people to be as anti-war wholesale as possible so America cannot defend its allies. I don't think Russia wants to attack us directly necessarily, outside of like informational war. I think they want to have carte blanche to attack NATO member nations, European nations, anything that's touching them they want to take, and they want no pushback from America. What's the best way to do that? Make it so the sitting U.S. president is terrified to help any nation we're in agreement with, because the voters will lose their shit and will make sure they don't get elected again. That is what I think Russia's goal is.
Funding, it makes you realize, like regular people at home, you are being manipulated to hate your neighbor more than you otherwise would. You are being manipulated to feel like everything is hopeless. You are being manipulated into these positions. And in a
lot of the Russian talking points these conservative pundits are repeating are about how America is so weak and in such a bad place right now, which of course are the same shit you hear from Russian military ads. Who's seen that recent Russian military ad? It's so bad. Oh my god. Let's see. It's a new one. Yeah, it's Russian military ad. Be a gay or men is what it's called. Are you gonna be gay or are you gonna be a man and die in Ukraine?
Из чего же сделаны наши мужчины? Из татушек и проколотых ушек? Из иллюзий и банановых смузи?
Isn't it interesting how many of these like talking points, the idea that look at this, the left is feminizing men. These talking points the right has been repeating, we're now seeing in a Russian military ad that's being used as propaganda both against America and Ukraine, its ally, using talking points that they are shilling to Republican politicians to make popular in America. And American conservatives are falling for these talking points.
Сделаны наши мужчины из яркого грима и стримов.
Oh my god, it's Hassan.
Из сладких пирожных и брендов одежных.
It is really weird how much like Hassan glazes for Russia when like the Russian government despises everything about Hassan, from the way he dresses and paints his nails to the way that like he is pro-gay and trans. Like it's just weird to do like to be like that and to do apologia for a country that like would they like arrest Hassan if he stepped into Russia for like just dressing the way he does? Like I don't even know. Like I think they might just like execute you at the like terminal entering the country if you have like painted nails as a guy.
Сделаны наши мужчины. Из чего сделан ты? Присоединяйся к тем, кто сделан из чести, доблести и мужества.
Honor and valor and courage. Somehow still doesn't beat like the average US military recruitment ad. It still doesn't beat the like weird Call of Duty ass ads that we have now. Because they don't like our military has such a high budget that we can make the CGI in our military recruitment ads look better than Avengers Endgame. Yeah, we have some really high budget, really fucking crazy recruitment ads in America. That our ads still beat out that one, even in like the cringe macho department, to be honest. The two genders, gay and man, as we all know, of course. Yes, thank you so much, by the way, if you enjoyed this segment. I feel it was quite fun. Nice to get some vindication on a ton of conservative content creators just being grifters paid off by enemy nations to our own. Absolutely fantastic, amazing stuff. Love to find out that so many of the conservative pundits that I've been responding to for years are literally agents pushing for America's downfall, working for enemy nations to our own. Really, really crazy stuff. Wild to think that, in a way, the current war between nations being fought online or in the world is an information war being fought online. Kind of crazy to think about. Anyway, if you enjoyed this segment, consider leaving a like. Thumbs up mean a ton and help my channel a lot no matter when, where, or what you're watching. Comment down below to compound the effect. Subscribe and ring the bell icon so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload. Follow my social medias, all linked down below in the description. I really do appreciate it. It means a ton. Join my fan Discord if you haven't already. It's the main hub of my community and just a great place to hang out. I really like it. I announce all my new uploads and streams there so you won't miss anything, and host game events, call-in streams, and watch parties. So if you haven't already, join my Discord, make sure you hop on in there, and if you feel like it and you can afford it, if you want to help keep a roof above my head, the lights on, and the water running, consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me financially through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch in the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support me, even if you're just watching the stream and vibing, thank you so much, and have a good one.